So picking a kick drum is one of the most important things you can do in your track. It will have a drastic effect on your mix, and I always tell my students that it's much better that you find the right kick than do a ton of processing in your track, because it's always going to sound better. So let me show you a couple techniques here that you can audition your kicks quickly in your track to see if they work. So we've all done this when we're looking for kick drums in our browser, which is totally fine. You want to find sounds that you're like, hey, that sounds like a cool kick. Maybe I'm going to try it out. But the simple fact is that to really know if a kick drum is going to work, you have to test it with the track. Okay. So a good way to do that is to load in a drum rack into a track. We'll create a blank clip here with Shift Command M. And now I'm going to load all of my kick drum samples in by selecting the first one, hold Shift, select the last one, and just drag them all in. Now we need to create a MIDI note here. Set the grid to quarter notes there. Command D to duplicate, highlight those, and hit Command L to loop. So now that we have a couple kick drums in our drum rack here, we can audition them by switching them in and out by grabbing one of the sample pads and just dragging it onto the row where the MIDI note is triggering. So you can see that just swapped it out. And then we can start deleting the ones we don't like. And so again, I highly recommend you do this while you're listening to the whole track. So I didn't really like this one, so I could start deleting, test them out. If there's ones that you like, you could put them up at the top of the drum rack here. Another way of doing this too is you could just go into the MIDI clip, highlight the notes, and use the up arrow to move them up and down. So sometimes our kick samples are going to be at different volume levels. And so that can throw you off a little bit, because if you hear a kick that's louder, we gravitate toward liking sounds that are louder because we can hear them better. So if you need to, before doing this auditioning process, you can click on one of the sample pads, go into the simpler, and just adjust the volume up here. And so you could do that if you want to even them all out, get a more fair, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, you just hear a more gain matched. That's the word. So if you want to adjust the volumes to even everything out, they'll be more gain matched and you'll get a more true comparison. But sometimes when you're just in the moment making the track, it's like you don't really want to slow it down and do that. You just want to get to making music. And I also highly recommend too, when you're just writing the track, just pick a kick and go. It doesn't matter. You can change the kick later. Just write the track. Don't worry too much about it. If you sit there, anytime I've written a track where I sit there, I'm like, oh, I'm going to make this kick the perfect thing from the beginning, it ruins my flow. And I always find, sometimes I change the kick later. Sometimes I keep the one I started with. And I'll probably make another video about kick drums because they're so important. And there's a lot of tips to share, and I definitely will. I think I'm probably going to make an entire course on, making house tracks and the importance of kick drums and drum patterns and stuff. But anyway, so let's get back to it here. So I've settled on picking this kick here. And so now I can just remove all the other ones, right? And we could do that as we go. So when I'm working, it probably looks more, like try one out, delete one, try one out, delete one. So now let's hear it in the track. Sounds pretty good, and I might just turn it down a little bit. And so the next most important thing, I just want to share one more tip before I leave here, is to change the decay of the kick drum, essentially shortening it up. So one of the biggest things that you can do to get your kick to sit in the mix better is to use a nice short kick, right? So if you use a long kick, it's going to get in the way of the bass. It's going to fight. It's going to cause more problems. The tighter, the shorter the kick is, the easier it's going to get to sit in there, and it's going to sound better. So you can adjust that by selecting the simpler into classic mode here. I like to remove the sustain on the ADSR envelope here, because sustain is really only when we're having a sound that sustains, like a piano or something. There's no real sustain to a kick drum sample unless it's like a really long 808 or something. So now what you could do is you could use the decay control and release control if needed to kind of shorten the kick up. And know this too, if you shorten it, you notice we kind of hear a volume drop, so you might need to compensate some more volume on the output of the simpler there. Too short. Let's hear it with the bass line. Anywhere in there is going to generally work pretty good. So another way to check if the kick is working is to do this. Use the track activator to mute it, play the loop, bring the kick in, and just say, hey, was that a nice experience? Does it sound like the kick is supposed to be there? Does it sound like it's working with the track? You can also test it in groups of instruments, so we could take out our bass and chords here, just to see how it sounds with the drums. Does it sound like drums? Does it sound like this kick belongs with this tops loop? So this is one of the most challenging things of being an electronic music producer, is picking sounds and then matching them, right? Making something that's like, oh yeah, that kick's supposed to go with this with these drum tops. So yeah, mute, unmute things, check it inside of the track, whatever way you got to do it. There are other ways. You can do the hot swap function in Ableton. I've never used that, honestly, like very rarely. Sometimes for grooves I do, but not for swapping kicks. All right, so let's recap this video. 1, it's important to audition your kick while the track is playing. 2, know that you can replace the kick later in the track. If it's not working, no worries. Just write the track, change it later if you need to. Just have fun. Number 3, adjust the decay time on your kick sample, adjust the volume. And number 4, check your kick with other sounds. Use the track activators to mute stuff, bring the bass in, bring the bass out, take the kick out. You hear that jump and you hear a change, and you can then assess if it's a good kick or not. If you're interested in learning more, I have a bunch of courses on my website, which is linked below. If you have any questions on this video, put them in the comments. Let me know what you're interested in learning, and I'll see if I can make a video about it. And see you in the next one.